Greetings and welcome to my channel. Last episode we covered what was left of the NGS main story up to this point. So we've got some side stories to cover. Before we get into that, I like to just talk about something real quick. When I start up NGS, I like to kind of let it load up in the background, especially after I've picked my character, because it usually takes about 5 to 10 minutes, which is my computer's fault. But anyway, so when I think it's ready to start and I click on it to bring it back up, NGS is in the middle of a cutscene. Now, I didn't know this as I saw it, but I figured out later that it was a cutscene for a new quest that just dropped today. But when I first saw that, I was like, wow, Sega did not even giving me any time to, prepare to record that, just jumping it on me, while I have the video tabbed out, I have the game tapped out because I'm waiting for it to load. That's low. Anyway, yeah, it kind of felt like crap at the time, but it's not a big deal. It's just for, a new quest for, a Dark Falls tier, Starless, or whatever. Not important. Anyway, let's get on to the meat of the video, shall we?
Hello. You came at just the right time. Do you have a minute to talk?
Of course I do.
Feria here was just telling me more about the Starless.
So far, it's been familiar information.
But any scrap of info at this point helps a great deal. I thought it might be a good idea to share it with you, our guardian. Is there anything in particular you would like to know about the Starless?
I feel like we already know where they first appeared at, so let's go for where did they come from.
They suddenly appeared from outside of human space, seemingly from nowhere.
And then they began attacking, seemingly without reason. That was 500 years ago now. Sadly, humans at the time were no match for them, and those on the periphery were. Suffice it to say, many lives were lost in the remote star systems.
Yeah, 700 billion human lives were lost. You kind of covered that already. Does that mean the other regions fought them off? That's a good question. We haven't heard about that yet.
Right, but the inner regions were mostly left untouched. There wasn't exactly a fight, per se.
Oh, so they only went for the furthest out regions where we at our weakness. Okay, I see you. They knowingly avoided our defenses. That's kind of sussy.
After the Starless destroyed the border star systems, they began to expand their offensive, even farther afield. Until one day, they suddenly disappeared.
So they got what they wanted and bailed. As if they were sending a message. Yeah, that's mad sus. That's, I'm gonna assume they went into hiding, because that seems to make sense with the narrative we're writing thus far.
Good question. That's what people at the time suspected. They even carried out a large-scale search. But, despite their best efforts, they couldn't find so much as a trace of them.
Indeed, there was no evidence of retreat, nor any indication that they were in hiding.
It seems as though the Starless simply vanished, without a trace.
This is sounding more and more like somebody created the Starless to give people a reason to fight again. Kind of like how Zhepetto made a bunch of ARKS so that somebody could fight them off. It's kind of sounding like this whole thing is staged, is what I'm saying. More so than it already is.
Regardless, the fact remains that they attacked without warning and killed billions of people. Some people saw that as reason enough to take action.
Like Zhepetto, for instance.
And so, Resurgent ARKS was formed. But that's a long story, in and of itself.
2 seconds later.
People were traumatized by the Starless attack 500 years ago. Some of those people formed what would go on to become Resurgent ARKS. That much we've covered already, right?
Yep.
Can you continue, Feria?
Yes. Resistance to the Starless threat developed and manifested in various ways. Zhepetto was part of one such resistance movement. He had also participated in the war against the Starless. Zhepetto was concerned about the decline in military capability and photon power at the time.
Both of these options seem reasonable, so I'm gonna go with the one that somebody who uses photons regularly would go with.
A great war had taken place 1,000 years prior, with a long period of peace afterward.
A direct reference to the events on Oracle, I see.
And it is believed that photon power declined because people no longer needed to fight.
Additionally, without an enemy, there's no need for much of a military.
Zhepetto began to study the most powerful unit in that ancient Great War to see if he could find some way to counter the Starless. That unit was ARKS.
His goal was to restore it to its former power. And so began Resurgent ARKS.
Zhepetto claimed that the odds of the Starless reappearing in the next 500 years were high. He boasted that ARKS was uniquely suited to counter the Starless threat.
Gee. I wonder why.
Resurgent ARKS became a rallying point for people who shared such sentiments.
Well, I'm not going to go for that second option, lest I be criticized for working that man's shaft, so... why did he think the Starless would reappear in 500 years?
His research was obsessively focused on the Starless's movement patterns.
Oh, really?
There are significant space-time fluctuations which occur at certain intervals. Among them, some are large, and others are small. The one 500 years ago was small.
He predicted that a major fluctuation would occur 500 years after that.
Yeah, I bet he did. You know, in hindsight, it's really interesting that he had a bunch of brainwashed people to do all his calculations for him. So that way nobody would see what he's actually working on. That's not suspect at all, though. No, why would it be, really?
And that brings us to the current emergence of the Starless. The exact causal relationship between these two events is not well understood, or at least, not by the Lecielans anyway.
I mean, they haven't had control over their minds for how long? Of course they don't. Zhepetto, on the other hand, do we know anything else about him, by the way?
I do not know any more than that. We had no interest in these sorts of matters. Before now, that is.
Meaning, Zhepetto didn't make a point of it. Or perhaps deliberately wanted to hide it.
Considering what we discussed up to this point, that certainly wouldn't surprise me.
We may find more answers in Leciel's core. Can I trust you to continue helping us with our investigation, Feria?
Yes.
So yeah, it should be blatantly obvious from the way I cut it that was two separate cutscenes there. It does not look like Crawford has anything else for us, though. But there is somebody that, by the name of their next cutscene, looks like they have more to say about the Lecielans, so let's go talk to that person.
Oh, hey there!
Hey, Anna. Who you hanging out with?
Hey,
Oh, Elma, hey. I don't usually see you two together like this.
I was called regarding Manon's inquest.
And I wanted to know every detail.
Not surprising.
Don't worry, Manon and Feria are both just fine.
I just got done talking to Feria, actually. She was hanging out with Crawford, of all people. Though they seem to just be exchanging information, which, knowing Crawford, isn't surprising.
Their quarters are a little cramped, but they're not being mistreated. The same goes for the others. The problem is...
Trouble getting the data together?
That's part of it. They all played a role at Leciel, but each one had different responsibilities.
I'm not sure I like what you're implying here.
The data's inconsistent, so it's tough to present a comprehensive case. But what's even harder than that is trying to get on the same page with them.
So it's communications issues then. I imagine they all talk in the same kind of robotic mindset that Feria had when she first got here.
Like when we say, tell us about Leciel, or something, for example. They start going into detail about its construction and its specs and stuff like that. It's almost like trying to talk to a data mainframe or something.
Manon was like that at first, too. She'd just reply with the bare minimum. I remember my dad having a hard time with that.
For them, I guess, that's probably just their normal.
I mean, they'd been Zhepetto's puppets for how many years where they haven't had to use their minds for much other than, like you said, the bare minimum.
But Manon's different now.
Yeah, she is. We're essentially having Manon interpret for us at the moment. If we put in the effort, then maybe they'll do the same and come around.
All it is they just need time to get used to thinking on their own.
At least, I hope so.
The rest will come along with that time.
And, on that note, we've decided to start calling them Lecielans.
Guess that explains why Crawford called them that.
Lecielans?
They're not our enemies anymore.
They never were. They were brainwashed. They had no control over their actions. All of that was Zhepetto. Why do I feel like I'm repeating myself? Sheesh.
Resurgent ARKS is just too loaded, you know? We had to change it.
You know what? I'm breaking character. I'm sorry, Sega. You're not selling me on this narrative of people blaming them for something they had literally no control over. Jesus.
Lecielans. Yeah, I like it.
Yeah, well, they're not living there anymore, so don't expect that name to stick for very long. Couple decades, maybe. Unless Sega continues this nonsense persecution storyline that they're apparently shoving down our throats. Because holy shit. Okay, so we have at least one more cutscene with Aina, and then one with Dozer, and one with Ilma, so... I think now's a good place to cut it, because assuming there's no more after these three are used up, there's going to be like one more episode's worth of this, so... Yeah, I think now's a good point to cut it off. The video's not too long, you know, it's under 20 minutes, so that's good. Thank you for watching the video. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope to see you in the next one. And I hope Sega doesn't shove this nonsense prerogative down our throats. You know, about fictional characters. I'm just going to shut up. Farewell.